The courtroom grew still as 8-year-old Zora stepped up to the witness stand. Judge Harrison sneered, clearly unimpressed. "I can read your thoughts," she said, her voice soft but unmistakably clear. The judge chuckled, cold and dismissed. She leaned in and whispered, "I know about the woman you buried beneath the oak tree. Where are you watching from today? Before we uncover the truth behind this chilling moment, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories where justice triumphs against the odds." What would you do if a child revealed your darkest secret in public? Let's find out what happens next. Zora Williams wasn't like the other 8-year-olds in Oakwood. While most of her classmates fussed over playground drama or favorite TV shows, Zora carried something far greater, a gift her grandmother called the knowing. It struck without warning, flashes of truth that peeled back lies others tried to hide. Her grandmother, Mama Ruby, had recognized it early. Her own mother had once possessed the same ability, an ancestral gift passed down every other generation. They lived together in a worn-down home on Oakwood's east side, where black families had been rooted since the days of segregation. Though the laws had changed, the divisions in town still ran deep and unspoken. Zora's mind was brilliant, treating at a high school level and solving math problems that baffled even her teachers. But her brilliance only made her a target. Other kids called her names: witch girl, freak. She often sat alone at lunch, her back to the wall, a quiet outsider. The Williams family had never known ease. Mama Ruby juggled 2 jobs, cleaning the homes of wealthy white families by day, mopping hospital floors by night. They managed to get by, just barely. Their home had belonged to 3 generations of Williamses. It wasn't theirs on paper, a long-standing handshake agreement, honored for nearly 60 years. But everything changed when the original owner died. His son Connor Phillips took over and brought new rules. The rent notice came on a Tuesday. It had nearly doubled. A brief note attached read, "Due to market rate adjustments." Mama Ruby's hands trembled as she read it. She knew her 2 incomes couldn't cover that amount. "They want us out, Weepy," she told Zora over beans and cornbread. "They've been trying to push us out of this neighborhood for years. This land's worth more without us on it." Zora studied her grandmother's tired face, the worry settling deeper into her wrinkles. "We can't let them take our home," she said with quiet fire. "This is where Mama grew up, where you grew up." Mama Ruby nodded. "You're right. My daddy built that porch with his bare hands. Your great-grandmama planted that magnolia tree out front." She sat straighter. "We're not leaving without a fight." The next morning, she went to the legal aid office downtown, a place filled mostly with people of color fighting uphill battles in systems built to work against them. She was assigned a young biracial lawyer named Ms. Daniels, known for taking the cases others wouldn't. "They can't just raise rent like that without proper notice," Ms. Daniels said, "and there are serious habitability violations here. We can fight this." That night, Mama Ruby explained their plan over dinner. As she spoke, Zora felt that unmistakable tingling at the base of her skull. The knowing, a vision flashed, a stern white man in black robes, his lips curled in contempt. The name Harrison echoed in her mind, though she'd never heard it before. "Who's going to be the judge?" she asked suddenly. Mama Ruby looked surprised. "I don't know, sweet pea." "Why?" Zora shrugged. "Just wondering." But inside, unease was rising fast. As the court date neared, Mama Ruby gathered everything: receipts for repairs she'd covered herself, letters asking for maintenance that were ignored, pictures of the leaky roof and broken heater. But Zora's sense of dread grew stronger. The night before court, she dreamed of moonlight shining through oak leaves, a woman's scream cut short, and soil being shoveled over something that shouldn't be buried. She woke, drenched in sweat. "I have to go with you tomorrow," she told Mama Ruby over breakfast. Her grandmother frowned. "Court's no place for a child." Ms. Daniels said it might get ugly. "I have to be there," Zora said, firmly. Her voice didn't sound like a child's. It carried weight, the kind that came from generations past. Mama Ruby studied her, recognizing that look, the knowing. She sighed. All right, but you stay quiet and respectful. You hear me? They already don't take our kind seriously. Zora nodded solemnly. Something was coming. The Oakwood County Courthouse loomed like a fortress, tall white columns, marble steps, built during an era when black residents couldn't even use the front entrance. Those laws were gone, but Zora could feel what lingered. In the air. Inside, security guards scrutinized them while white visitors breezed through. Stand tall, Mama Ruby whispered. Don't let them shrink you. The halls echoed with polished shoes and murmurs. Old portraits of white judges lined the walls row after row, no faces that looked like theirs. Ms. Daniels met them outside courtroom, see her hair tied back, a muted African print scarf at her neck. She looked uneasy. They reassigned us this morning, she said quietly. We've got Judge William Harrison. Zora froze. Harrison. Mama Ruby's face darkened. Is that bad? Ms. Daniels hesitated. Let's just say, he has a reputation. Very pro-property rights. Not exactly sympathetic to tenants. What she didn't say, but what everyone already knew, was that Judge Harrison had never ruled in favor of a black tenant in his 15 years on the bench. He's the one, Zora murmured, but the women were too deep in legal strategy to hear her. The courtroom was dark and imposing. High ceilings, polished wood. The judge's bench towered above all else. They sat on the hard benches and waited. One by one, cases flew by. Judge Harrison barely glancing at tenants before ruling against them. Then came Williams versus Phillips. Properties, bought. Ms. Daniels rose with Mama Ruby. Zora followed, sitting in the first row. Across from them stood Connor Phillips, looking smug beside his lawyer. Mr. Bradshaw, his suit, more expensive than 3 months' rent. Judge Harrison didn't hide his disdain as Ms. Daniels laid out their case. He didn't even pretend. Your Honor, Ms. Daniels began firmly. Mrs. Williams has been a reliable tenant for over 2 decades. This sudden 90% rent hike, without appropriate notice or justification, violates county housing regulations, especially in light of the unresolved maintenance issues the landlord has repeatedly ignored. Mr. Bradshaw smoothly interjected. Your Honor, my client is merely aligning the rent with current market conditions. The property has been undervalued for years out of courtesy, but given the recent development in the area, the adjustment is both necessary and legally sound. Judge Harrison gave a cursory glance at the paperwork. I see no evidence of these alleged maintenance complaints in the file, he said flatly. Ms. Daniels blinked, her confusion unmistakable. Your Honor, I submitted the documentation to the clerk just yesterday afternoon. Judge Harrison gave a dismissive shrug. Well, they're not in front of me now. Without that, I can only consider the evidence presented. Ms. Daniels opened her mouth to protest, but the judge raised a hand. Mr. Phillips has every right to adjust rent to market value. If Mrs. Williams can't meet the increase, perhaps it's time she found more suitable housing. He glanced at his watch. Clearly done. Unless there's something more, I'm prepared to rule. Zora clenched the edge of the bench, fury rising in her chest. This wasn't justice, it was performance, and the script had been written long before they stepped into the room. Then the images came, flashes of moonlight through branches. The oak tree, the terrified face of a woman. Judge Harrison younger, but unmistakable. His hands filthy with dirt and something darker. Before she could think, Zora rose to her feet. I need to speak, she said, her voice ringing out in the tense courtroom. Ms. Daniels turned sharply. Alarm etched across her face. Zora, no, she whispered. But Zora was already walking toward the bench, undeterred by the bailiff who moved to block her. Judge Harrison scowled. Young lady, Return to your seat. This isn't a game. Zora stopped in front of the raised bench, gazing up at him, her voice unwavering. I can read your thoughts, she said clearly. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Nervous laughter followed. Judge Harrison sneered. Oh, and what am I thinking, little girl? Zora didn't flinch. You're thinking no one knows what you did to Catherine Morgan 20 years ago? You're remembering the oak tree on Riverside Road and how deep you had to dig that night, under the full moon. The smirk vanished from his face. All the color drained from his skin. What did you say? He croaked. Zora stood firm, her small figure grounded by a force older than herself. The knowing surged within, her flooding her with names, moments, hidden truths. Catherine Morgan, she repeated. She had blonde hair, wore a silver necklace with a blue stone. You argued, by the tree where the river bends. She said she had proof. She said she was going to expose you. The judge's hand trembled as he gripped the gavel. This is nonsense. Bailiff, remove her now. But the bailiff hesitated, unease settling over the room like fog. You drove a black truck, Zora continued. You brought a shovel. When she turned to leave, you struck her. She never got up again. You buried her under the oak. You threw her purse in the river, but you kept the necklace. It's still in your desk hidden under the false bottom. Judge Harrison's mask cracked, revealing raw panic. Enough. These are lies, slanderous lies. She's been coached. He pounded the gavel, the sharp cracks only intensifying the room's tension. Ms. Daniels rushed forward, placing herself protectively in front of Zora. Your Honor, I had no idea she was going to say any of this. The judge stood abruptly, his hands shaking, sweat glistening on his brow. This court is in recess. Clear the room, he shouted, but the control he once commanded had evaporated. Papers scattered. The mask of authority crumbled from the corner of the courtroom. A frail voice spoke. Catherine Morgan, said the elderly clerk, eyes wide. That young reporter who disappeared. Folks said she ran off, but her mother never believed it. In the back, a district attorney, waiting for another case, leaned forward sharply, eyes narrowing in focus. Judge Harrison stumbled backward, collapsing into his chair. This is a setup, he spat. A conspiracy. I'll have everyone in contempt. But his threats rang hollow. Ms. Daniels pulled Zora back. We need to go, she whispered. Mama Ruby was already moving down the aisle, her eyes wide with awe and fear. Sweet Jesus, she murmured, scooping Zora into her arms as the little girl began to sway. The visions were coming faster, now too fast. Catherine Morgan, finding sealed court files. A bribe in a parking lot. Forged signatures. A midnight phone call. Harrison.com and deliberate. Loading the shovel. It was all too much. Zora's body went limp in her grandmother's arms. The courtroom had erupted into chaos. The bailiff remained frozen. Reporters were already dialing sources, jotting furiously. Ms. Daniels grabbed their paperwork and cut a path toward the exit. We have to get her out. The district attorney was already on the phone, his gaze fixed on the judge's empty seat. They'll come after her, Mama Ruby whispered as they pulled up to their modest home. A black child accusing a white judge in this town. Ms. Daniels nodded grimly, her hands tense on the steering wheel. Stay inside. Don't talk to anyone, especially not reporters. I'll call once I get a handle on the situation. That afternoon, Zora drifted in and out of restless sleep, exhausted from the courtroom chaos. Across town, the courthouse buzzed with whispers. Clerks murmured behind closed doors. By evening, local news stations ran vague segments about a courtroom disruption involving Judge Harrison. The judge himself had vanished since fleeing the bench. Inside a small office at the police station, Detective Marcus Johnson sat alone, hunched over his computer. As one of only 3 black officers in Oakwood's force, he'd learned how to navigate the quiet currents of racial politics in law enforcement. Now, He was combing through digitized case files, searching for anything on Catherine Morgan. The name tugged at an old memory he'd just started as a rookie when she went missing. He remembered the case ending far too quickly. The file was disturbingly thin. Catherine Morgan, 28, investigative reporter for the Oakwood Gazette, specialized in political corruption. No forced entry at her apartment. Her car was found parked at the bus station. Case closed within 3 days. Johnson's eyes narrowed when he saw the investigating officer's name, Thomas Reynolds, Judge Harrison's former brother-in-law. Too neat, too fast. His phone rang. A trusted contact from the courthouse spoke in hushed tones. "Marcus, you won't believe what happened today." A little black girl walked right up and accused Judge Harrison of murder. She knew details, stuff no one should know. The old-timers say the Morgan case got shut down too fast back then. Harrison looked like he'd seen a ghost. Johnson thanked her, hung up, and printed the file, sliding it quietly into his personal bag. He didn't trust the system to keep it safe once Harrison realized people were asking questions. Back at the Williams house, the phone rang, jolting Zora from sleep. Mama Ruby answered. "This is Judge Harrison," came the voice, cold, stripped of decorum. "You keep that disturbed child of yours quiet, or you'll regret it. I've got friends in every department in this county." Mama Ruby's hand shook as she hung up without a word. The pressure escalated quickly. The landlord's attorney called, offering to forgive the rent increase if they signed a statement, recanting Zora's claims. Zora's school principal phoned, suggesting she take a leave of absence for her well-being. By nightfall, a black SUV with tinted windows parked across from their home and remained there until morning. Ms. Daniels arrived early the next day. Her face was tight with concern. "The story's spreading, but they're trying to control it. The official narrative is that Zora had a psychiatric break." She handed Mama Ruby a printed article, carefully worded to discredit Zora, without naming Harrison or the allegations. Detective Johnson pieced together Catherine Morgan's last known movements. Her final published piece exposed shady land deals that favored developers, though no officials were named. Her notebook from that time was now missing. When Johnson asked for the original witness reports, the clerk claimed they were lost during the digitization process. Too many coincidences. At home, Zora's visions grew stronger. As she helped Mama Ruby wash dishes, she suddenly froze, dropping a plate. "He kept a press badge," she whispered, eyes glassy, "in a box, in his basement, with her tape recorder. He listens to it when he drinks." Mama Ruby rushed to draw the curtains. "You've got to stop seeing these things, baby. It's not safe." That afternoon, they opened their mailbox too, find it stuffed with racist hate mail. Someone had spray-painted LIAR in red across their front steps. Ms. Daniels documented everything, building a harassment case. "Some folks are quietly on our side," she said, "people who've suffered under Harrison. But his allies are powerful and angry." Detective Johnson made his first official move. He filed a request for Catherine Morgan's missing persons report as part of a cold case review. Hours later, his supervisor summoned him. "Drop it," Captain Myers ordered. "I don't know what you're digging into, but Harrison called. Says you're harassing court staff." Johnson kept his voice calm. "Just routine file updates, sir." The captain's face hardened. "Nothing involving Harrison is routine. Consider this a friendly warning." That night, a fire broke out in the courthouse records room, contained quickly, but not before it damaged several boxes from the exact time frame of Catherine's disappearance. The next morning, Mama Ruby received a call from her longtime employer. "I'm sorry, Ruby," said Mrs. Whitfield. "We have to let you go. Budget cuts." Mama Ruby knew better. The Whitfields were close with Harrison's family. Later that day, a Child Protective Services caseworker showed up unannounced. "We've received an anonymous report," the woman said, eyes avoiding contact. "Concerns about Zora's mental health and possible coaching." "You need a warrant," Mama Ruby said, blocking the door. "My grandbaby's fine and, you know it." After the caseworker left, Mama Ruby called Miss Daniels, crying there, trying to take her from me. That evening, Detective Johnson drove to Riverside Road alone, in his personal car. The massive oak tree stood where the old maps had shown. He walked its perimeter, scanning the quiet woods. The ground had settled but not forgotten. Then his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, Oakwood Plaza Hotel, room 212, 1 hour. "Come alone. Info about Morgan." He hesitated, then decided to go. An elderly woman opened the door. Her hands trembled. "I was the secretary at the Gazette when Catherine disappeared. She was investigating Harrison when he was still a prosecutor, evidence tampering in cases against black defendants. She had proof." The woman handed him a yellowed business card with a storage unit number written on the back. "She gave me this the day before she vanished. Told me to give it to someone if anything ever happened to her. I was too scared. Still am." The next day, Mama Ruby and Zora's water and electricity were shut off, despite their bills being paid. That evening, they found a note under the door. "Little girls who tell lies disappear too." Too afraid to stay home, they spent the night at Ms. Daniels' apartment. Zora finally drifted off to sleep on the couch, only to be jolted awake at dawn by loud banging. Mama Ruby emerged, tying her robe. Ms. Daniels peeked through the peephole, gasping. "Police," she whispered. 2 officers stood outside, faces stern. "We're looking for Ruby and Zora Williams. We have questions about possible false statements made in court." Ms. Daniels slipped into attorney mode instantly. "My clients have made no false statements. Any questioning must go through me with proper notice." The officers exchanged glances. "Judge Harrison has filed a restraining order against the minor. She's to remain 500 feet away from the courthouse and his residence." Ms. Daniels scanned the papers. "Will comply while I file to have it overturned. Now, unless you have a warrant, good day." She shut the door, turning to Mama Ruby. "They're trying to silence Hurligley now. This is only the beginning." By noon, CPS had escalated their investigation, ordering a home inspection and psychological evaluation. Ms. Daniels worked quickly, filing emergency motions to expose the retaliation. Meanwhile, Detective Johnson took a personal day and visited the storage unit. Unit for 9. Inside, he found a plastic tub of damning evidence, photocopied court records, developer payments routed through a shell company tied to Harrison, a list of criminal cases with missing evidence, all involving black defendants, and in a sealed envelope marked insurance, photos of Harrison meeting developers in isolated places, accepting cash-filled envelopes, dates and times noted. Catherine had built her case. She'd been close. Back at Mama Ruby's house, a rock crashed through the window. A crude drawing of a hanging figure was attached, scrawled with "Justice for Liars." The responding officer barely took notes. Probably just local kids, he said. No investigation followed. The harassment only worsened. Zora's principal called. She was suspended for disrupting the educational environment, though she hadn't been back to school since the hearing. Neighbors avoided eye contact, crossed the street to keep their distance. Even their pastor stopped by to gently suggest they worship elsewhere. For now, isolation, the oldest tactic in the book. And still, Zora's visions came. During dinner at Miss Daniels' apartment, she froze, fork midair. "There's a witness," she whispered. "An old man. He was fishing that night. He saw Harrison's truck. He's still afraid." Miss Daniels took notes, torn grateful for the leads, yet unsure how to use what couldn't be explained. Meanwhile, Judge Harrison wasn't done. He filed for an emergency competency hearing, claiming Zora posed a threat to herself and others. with her delusions. The judge assigned to the hearing, Judge Powell Harrison's longtime golf buddy and former law school classmate. M.A.'s. Daniels filed motion after motion to disqualify him. All denied. Oakwood had become a town divided. In grocery stores and break rooms, people whispered, could a kid really know all that? Maybe she's just being used. She's only 8. She's a prophet. She's dangerous. White residents closed ranks around Judge Harrison. Black residents recognized the pattern all too well, and through it all, Detective Johnson pressed on. When he requested satellite imagery from 2 decades ago, his login credentials were suddenly under review. When he tried to requisition ground-penetrating radar, denied. This time, his supervisor called him in with the chief present. This is far from over. Chief Mathers didn't flinch. Whatever crusade you're on, Johnson, it ends now, he said flatly. You're reassigned to traffic duty, effective immediately. Turn in your case files. That evening, Detective Marcus Johnson met Ms. Daniels at a diner 20 miles outside Oakwood. He slid the contents of Catherine Morgan's storage unit across the table. Ms. Daniels leafed through the documents, her eyes sharp with focus. This is enough to demand a formal investigation. Not in Oakwood, Johnson replied grimly. This town's justice system was built to protect men like Harrison. We need something indisputable. We need her body. The next day, Miss Daniels filed emergency motions to block both the CPS investigation and the upcoming competency hearing, citing evidence of judicial retaliation and corruption. As expected, the motions were swiftly denied by judges friendly to Harrison. The hearing was scheduled for Monday. The CPS evaluation, Tuesday time, was running out. On Saturday morning, Zora woke with sudden, unshakable clarity. I need to go to the oak tree, she said at breakfast. I can show you exactly where Catherine is buried. Mama Ruby and Miss Daniels exchanged nervous glances. That's too dangerous. Baby, Mama Ruby warned gently. These people will do anything to stop us now. But Zora stood firm. If they take me after the hearing, we won't get another chance. Catherine's been waiting 20 years. She's still waiting. Detective Johnson agreed to meet them at the site, bringing a cadaver dog on loan from a trusted canine officer, under the pretense of training. As they drove to Riverside Road, a black SUV appeared in the rearview mirror, following at a cautious distance. We're being watched, Ms. Daniels muttered, taking several unpredictable turns to confirm the tale. We should turn back, Mama Ruby whispered. When they reached the oak tree, Johnson was already waiting. The German shepherd at his side sat alert, ears pricked. The black SUV stopped at the edge of the road. A man with binoculars sat behind the tinted glass, watching. Zora stepped out and walked directly to a patch of ground, about 15 feet from the tree's wide trunk near the riverbank. Here, she said calmly. 6 feet down. She's wearing a blue dress and one shoe. The other came off during the struggle. The cadaver dog sniffed across the area before suddenly freezing, then began barking and pawing at the exact spot Zora indicated. The man in the SUV immediately made a phone call. We need to move now, Johnson said urgently. This is enough to demand an official search, but they'll be here within minutes to shut it down. As they rushed back to their cars, Zora paused again, her eyes distant. There's a fishing cabin a quarter-mile downstream, she whispered. An old man lives there, Earl Thompson. He saw it. He wrote Harrison's license plate in his fishing journal. They didn't wait. They drove straight to the county line, where Sheriff Martinez, an old academy friend of Johnson's, was waiting. I'll send deputies to find this Earl Thompson, Martinez promised, and I'll request the excavation warrant through my jurisdiction. Not Oakwood's, but you all need to vanish for a few days. Harrison still has friends with badges. That night, using Ms. Daniels' sister's credit card to avoid detection, they checked into a cheap motel 50 miles away. Local news ran a breaking story. Judge Harrison had taken an emergency medical leave of absence. The competency hearing was indefinitely postponed back in Oakwood. Rumors swirled about a police operation at Riverside Road. The protective wall around Harrison was starting to fracture. The Pinewood Motel smelled of bleach and old cigarettes. But it was safe for now. Mama Ruby sat on the edge of a sagging bed, watching Zora sleep, her young face twitching with dreams. Ms. Daniels paced the carpet, whispering into her phone. Double quotes, "Yes, I know the risks," she said, "but we have to act fast before they bury this again." She hung up and turned to Mama Ruby. "Something's happening in Oakwood. People are organizing." At dawn, Reverend James stood on Mama Ruby's porch, staring at the broken window and the spray-painted slurs. Behind him, 24 church members unloaded supplies from their cars and pickup trucks. "They came for one of our children," he declared. "We won't stand by this time." By noon, the window was replaced, the graffiti painted over, and a watch rotation established to guard the house around the clock. Across Oakwood's east side, similar scenes unfolded. The black community was mobilizing. For years, they'd suffered under Harrison's ruling's harsh sentences for black youth. Evictions, ignored complaints. Now, they had a window, and they weren't going to waste it. Ms. Daniels' phone rang. Again, Ayanna Jackson, an investigative reporter from the state capitol, had finally called back. "I'm in," Ayanna said simply. "This story goes deeper than one missing woman. Send me everything you have." Ayanna had a national platform and a reputation for taking down corrupt officials. Harrison wouldn't be able to silence her. By midday, Detective Johnson sat in Sheriff Martinez's office across from FBI agent Carla Rodriguez. "Local law enforcement is compromised," he said bluntly. "Harrison's network runs too deep for anything internal to be trusted." Rodriguez reviewed the documents. "These financial records alone justify a full federal investigation," she said. "We're looking at possible homicide, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. You were right to escalate this." Meanwhile, Ayanna began digging into property records, campaign donations, and court rulings. A pattern emerged. For over 15 years, Harrison consistently ruled in favor of developers, especially in historically black neighborhoods. He always sided against residents who challenged evictions or exploitation. His rulings came with sermons about personal responsibility and respect for property. More troubling were the criminal cases. Black defendants received sentences nearly 40% longer than white counterparts for the same charges. Ayanna began tracking down former courthouse staff. Some were retired, others relocated, but many had stories. "He called black defendants animals in chambers," said a former court reporter now living in Florida. "Said the East Side needed to be cleaned up and turned into something respectable." One by one, they painted a chilling picture. Judge Harrison wasn't just biased, he saw himself as the enforcer of a racial order. Back at Mama Ruby's home, when CPS arrived for their evaluation, they were met by 30 community members cleaning, repairing, and recording evidence of the home's safety. Teachers brought letters praising Zora's academic excellence and emotional maturity. The caseworker left without conducting the assessment at the Pinewood Motel. Zora sat up in bed, gasping. "The fisherman, they found him." Sheriff Martinez's deputies had located Earl Thompson, now 83. At first, he was hesitant, but with a guarantee of protection, the memory spilled out. "I was fishing late," he said. "Saw headlights near the oak. A woman yelling, then nothing. That man Harrison, he dug for 2 hours. I wrote down his plate number in my journal." He paused, voice trembling. "Always felt wrong staying quiet. But back then, one word from him, and I'd have lost everything." With Thompson's statement and the cadaver dog's alert, Sheriff Martinez moved quickly. The warrant to excavate the site was approved quietly, with outside personnel, just before dawn. forensic experts arrived. FBI agents secured the perimeter. Johnson watched silently as the soil was peeled away, inch by inch. By mid-morning, the town knew. Judge Harrison, attempting to flee, was spotted at the bus station, disheveled, frantic, and unhinged. He lashed out at reporters with racist rants. Multiple cell phone videos captured the scene and went viral. Local police, now under immense public pressure, reluctantly took him into protective custody. Back at the oak tree, the dig continued. 6 feet down, just as Zora had said, investigators uncovered a body, a blue dress, one shoe missing, a silver necklace with a blue stone still clasped around her decayed neck, and, miraculously, a preserved press badge. Catherine Morgan. That evening, Ayanna Jackson published her exposé detailed Harrison's rulings, developer ties, and the suppression of Catherine's disappearance. Included were testimonies, financial trails, sentencing statistics, and damning evidence from the excavation. The reaction was immediate, furious. Protesters flooded the streets outside the courthouse and police station. The mayor held an emergency press conference, desperately trying to contain the fallout. This is an isolated case, he insisted, not reflective of Oakwood's values. Few believed him. The FBI raided Harrison's home and office. Inside a bedroom drawer, just as Zora had described, they found a false bottom. Beneath it, Catherine's silver necklace in the basement, a box containing her press badge, notebook, and a battered tape recorder. On the tape, partially degraded, was Catherine's voice, confronting Harrison, accusing him, and then his response, cold, threatening, final. The truth had waited 20 years, in the dark now. It had come roaring into the light. DNA testing began immediately on the recovered remains, while Catherine Morgan's elderly mother flew in from Arizona. At a press conference, organized by Ayanna Jackson, she addressed the cameras with a trembling voice. "I told the police back then that something was wrong," she said, gripping the podium tightly. "But they didn't listen because that man told them not to." Back at the motel, Zora watched the broadcast silently. She turned to Mama Ruby and spoke softly. She needed someone to hear her. She's been trying to tell her story for 20 years. In Ayanna's latest video segment, she turned directly to viewers. What would you do if you witnessed a crime committed by someone powerful? Would you speak up immediately, or stay silent out of fear? Comment 1 if you believe you'd have the courage to come forward, or 2 if fear might hold you back like Earl Thompson. Like this video if you're inspired by how the community rallied to protect Zora and Mama Ruby, and subscribe to follow this fight for justice. Next, how will Judge Harrison defend himself against this mountain of evidence? And what will happen when Zora confronts him again? A gentle rain blanketed Oakwood as Detective Johnson stood by the excavation site, watching silently as the forensic team continued their work. Under blue tarps and harsh spotlights, the dig had taken on an almost sacred glow. Dr. Elaine Winters, the state's lead forensic anthropologist, brushed dirt from a partially intact hand. 20 years underground, she murmured, and she's still telling her story. Johnson nodded, deeply moved. Zora's eerie accuracy, every detail, from the dress to the missing shoe to the Within 24 hours of the discovery, Oakwood had become a media epicenter. Satellite trucks lined the square. State police had cordoned off the gravesite to keep onlookers and reporters at bay. The governor issued a public statement promising a full review of judicial conduct statewide. Inside Oakwood Elementary, Principal Bernard Walsh paced his office, phone to his ear. "Yes, I understand," he said, sweat on his brow. "But I'm worried about liability if we erase her file entirely." The voice on the other end barked louder. Walsh flinched. "Yes, sir. I know Judge Harrison is a personal friend, but with federal agents involved." After the call ended, Walsh slumped into his chair, staring at Zora's school records. He had spent 20 years navigating local politics. Now he was caught in a storm. His hand hovered over the file, then stopped. Too many people already knew about her. Destroying it now would only tie him to a cover-up. Quietly, he locked it away in his drawer. Elsewhere, in the dim motel room, Zora sat cross-legged on the bed. Ms. Daniels and Mama Ruby whispered near the window. Rain streaking down the glass. They found something else in the grave, Zora said suddenly, though no updates had aired. A bracelet with a broken clasp. Catherine fought back. She scratched his face. Ms. Daniels turned sharply. Zora, do you know that? The girl only shrugged. Catherine shows me. She wants the truth told. Mama Ruby crossed herself, an old Catholic reflex. The gift comes with responsibility, she whispered. Always has, in our family. At Oakwood Middle School, racial tensions had begun to erupt. 8th grader Marcus Taylor was shelved against the lockers, his books scattered. Your witch friend ruined everything. Brad Phillips sneered, the son of Connor Phillips. My dad says your whole neighborhood's getting bulldozed because of her. Though teachers intervened, similar scenes were unfolding all over town. Children echoed their parents' beliefs, privilege and resentment, clashing with justice and truth. Meanwhile, in the county jail, Judge Harrison sat alone in a cell. Bail had been denied by an outside judge. His polished appearance was gone, his hair disheveled, face unshaven, dressed in an orange jumpsuit. He oscillated between furious outbursts and vacant silence. His high-powered attorney, Spencer Williams, sat across from him in the visitation room. They found her exactly where the girl said, Williams said, grim. The press badge, the necklace in your drawer, the tape. DNA results are coming in, and the FBI has your financial records going back 2 decades. Harrison's hands trembled around a paper cup of water. This is a setup, he growled. That child was coached. Someone dug up the Morgan case and planted evidence. Williams didn't respond. And the fishermen, he continued. The rulings in favor of developers who lined your campaign. The racial disparities. The shell company. Harrison slammed the table. I've served this town for decades, preserved order, protected property values. This is how they repay me. Outside the jail, Eleanor Morgan, now 79, stood under an umbrella with her remaining daughter. She held a candle in one hand and a photo of Catherine in the other. Former colleagues from the Oakwood Gazette stood beside her. 20 years, she said through tears. I waited for someone to listen. My daughter was fearless. She was investigating corruption when she vanished. She would have been 48 this year, might have had children. All of that stolen because she believed in truth. Back at the dig site, Dr. Winters gently lifted a tarnished charm bracelet from the remains. Tissue caught in the broken clasp, she noted. She tried to fight. Johnson's phone buzzed. DNA sample from Harrison approved. Collection team en route. Martinez across town. Ayanna Jackson recorded interviews with former courthouse employees. Their faces were blurred to protect their identities. He told us to schedule black defendants at the end of the day. One former clerk recalled, said he processed them faster when he was tired. Another described overhearing meetings between Harrison and Connor Phillips' father. They planned which black neighborhoods to target for redevelopment, called it cleaning up, but it was just forced displacement. Meanwhile, Earl Thompson had been admitted to Riverside Community Hospital for chest pains after giving his formal statement. The stress of keeping that secret all these years. The attending doctor told the deputy outside his door, he's stable but we're watching him closely. Back at the motel, Ms. Daniels paced with excitement after answering a call. That was my contact at the state attorney general's office, she said. They're launching a full review of Harrison's rulings over the last 15 years. Hundreds of cases could be reopened, especially those with racial bias. For the Williams family and the entire East Side, it was the first sign that real systemic change might finally be coming. Zora, quietly coloring at the table, suddenly looked up. There are others, she whispered. Daniels and Mama Ruby froze. Others, Daniels asked carefully. Not more people, Zora said. Papers, evidence, hidden under the floorboards at his lake house. Things that could have helped innocent people. Daniels immediately contacted Agent Rodriguez and relayed the tip without mentioning its source. Within hours, the FBI secured a warrant. A team headed to the lake house, 30 miles outside Oakwood. As the day unfolded, more evidence emerged. Forensic accountants traced developer payments through Harrison's shell companies to offshore accounts. Former defendants came forward about evidence that had mysteriously disappeared before trial. Court reporters submitted transcripts showing Harrison's radically different treatment of black versus white defendants. By evening, Catherine Morgan's remains had been fully recovered and sent to the state medical examiner. Early findings confirmed blunt force trauma to the skull consistent with homicide. At the lake house, agents uncovered exactly what Zora described. Beneath loose floorboards in the bedroom closet, a trove of documents. Many were case files long believed to be lost, most involving black defendants accused by white accusers. The most damning, Catherine's own files. Photos of Harrison accepting bribes, records of evidence tampering, internal memos implicating city officials. That night, Oakwood held its collective breath, to some especially among the town's white power. Elite, it was a terrifying glimpse of long-delayed accountability. But for the black community, for families like the Williamses and Thompsons, for Zora and Mama Rubiette, was something else entirely. The long-awaited crack of light breaking through 20 years of silence. At the motel, Zora finally slept soundly, for the first time since confronting Judge Harrison in court. The burden of unseen truth had begun to lift. Mama Ruby sat quietly nearby, watching her granddaughter's peaceful face. She whispered a prayer of gratitude and protection. The gift that had brought so much danger had also brought a chance at long-overdue justice, not just for Catherine Morgan, but for an entire community. At the state medical examiner's office, Sunday morning was unusually busy. Dr. Marissa Chin, lead forensic pathologist, had summoned her entire team. The Morgan case was now under federal oversight and designated high priority. Beneath the stark examination lights, Catherine Morgan's remains began to speak to those trained to listen. Clear blunt force trauma to the occipital bone, Dr. Chin dictated into her recorder. Fracture pattern suggests a single, forceful blow from a rounded object of significant mass. Defensive wounds present on the right hand, indicating the victim attempted to shield herself. In a nearby lab, forensic technicians examined the evidence recovered from the gravesite. Within hours, they had a breakthrough. We've got epithelial cells embedded in the broken bracelet clasp. One DNA analyst reported, remarkably well preserved, and it's not the victim's DNA. That sample was rushed for comparison with the court-ordered DNA swab taken from Judge Harrison. Elsewhere, inside a secure FBI command center, Agent Carla Rodriguez spread out materials recovered from Harrison's lake house. Detective Johnson stood beside her. These meetings match the timeline of East Side evictions, Johnson observed, each one followed by a surge in property seizures. Rodriguez nodded, and Harrison ruled on 97% of those landlord-tenant disputes, ruling against the tenants. In every case. Even more damning were the case files from Catherine's investigation, recovered from beneath the lake house floorboards. They revealed that Harrison, long before becoming a judge, had manipulated evidence as a prosecutor, especially in cases involving black defendants. Catherine's handwritten notes documented specific incidents where crucial exculpatory evidence had vanished before trial, resulting in wrongful convictions. But the most explosive find was a partial draft of Catherine's final article never published. Prosecutor William Harrison has consistently undermined the constitutional rights of black defendants through a deliberate pattern of evidence suppression, witness intimidation, and procedural abuse. Courthouse sources say he refers to this as maintaining the natural order and believes certain people aren't meant to live freely among civilized society. Back at the Pinewood Motel, Zora sat beside Ms. Daniels as Ayanna Jackson gently conducted an interview. Mama Ruby stood nearby, watching, with quiet vigilance from the kitchenette. "I just know things sometimes," Zora explained, her voice soft. "My grandma says it runs in the family. My great-grandma had it too." When asked how she knew where Catherine was buried, Zora's expression turned solemn. "She showed me, at first, in dreams. Then it was clearer when I was in the courtroom. It was like watching a movie of what happened. I could feel how scared she was." Ayanna's article later presented Zora's insight, carefully avoiding sensationalism focusing, instead, on how the child's testimony had sparked a historic investigation at Sheriff Martinez's office. Eleanor Morgan held her daughter's recovered press badge, though scratched and faded. Catherine's determined smile remained visible through the plastic. "I always knew," Eleanor whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "A mother knows when her child hasn't just gone missing, but was taken." Martinez offered her a box of tissues, then placed another evidence bag on the desk. "We found this at the lake house," he said. "Her journal. Harrison likely took it after the murder. It contains notes from her investigation." Eleanor's hands trembled as she accepted the bag. She didn't open it, just held it tightly. "She was always writing," she murmured. "Even as a little girl." Said words were how we keep power honest. By noon, the preliminary DNA results arrived. The skin cells from the bracelet's broken clasp matched Judge William Harrison, with the journal, the lake house evidence, and Earl Thompson's eyewitness account. The case against Harrison was nearly airtight. The district attorney from the neighboring county pointed to avoid conflict of interest announced charges: first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, civil rights violations, and corruption. This case represents one of the gravest betrayals of public trust in our state's history, the special prosecutor declared at a press conference. A man tasked with upholding justice instead perverted it at every level, harming hundreds, especially those in communities of color. Harrison's lawyer filed a motion for a change of venue, citing media saturation in Oakwood. The judge denied it, noting that publicity had reached the entire state. In custody, Harrison's composure crumbled. No longer dignified, he swung between rage and despair. He attempted to negotiate leniency in exchange for naming others in the conspiracy. When investigators told him cooperation would only be considered during sentencing, not in lieu of charges, he lashed out, hurling racial slurs. Everything was documented by jail staff. Across Oakwood, residents were forced to confront the reality of a system many had trusted or feared. White citizens who had benefited from Harrison's rulings expressed disbelief or denial. Some claimed they were unaware. Others called Harrison tough but fair. But the black community responded with solemn vindication. "We always knew the system wasn't built for us," Reverend James said during Sunday's sermon. "The only difference now is they can't ignore it anymore." As the investigation deepened, more former defendants stepped forward. Journalists unearthed transcripts showing that Harrison often dehumanized black defendants, referring to them as "you people" and making disturbing remarks about inherent criminality. Former clerks revealed that Harrison ordered black defendants scheduled late in the day, when he was irritable and least lenient. The records from the lake house confirmed he'd suppressed evidence in at least 37 cases involving black defendants accused by white complainants. In 12 of those, the hidden material likely would have led to acquittals. The FBI widened its net, investigating Harrison's clerk, several officers, and developer, Connor Phillips, who had gained most from Harrison's rulings. Catherine's journal offered the final puzzle pieces. Her notes exposed a deliberate scheme to reclaim Eastside properties under the guise of legality, with Harrison as the judicial weapon for a coordinated real estate takeover. Her last entry, dated the day before, she vanished, read, "Meeting Harrison tonight at the oak tree near Riverside. He says he wants to give me documentation. I think it's a trap. left backup copies with E, just in case. On Monday, Ms. Daniels filed motions to vacate every eviction signed by Harrison that impacted East Side families, including Mama Ruby's. The state Supreme Court, citing extraordinary circumstances, issued a full stay on all pending evictions across Oakwood County. For the first time in decades, Eleanor Morgan slept through the night. "My Catherine can rest now," she told reporters, "and maybe her work will finally be finished." That evening, Zora sat on the motel's small balcony, watching fireflies dance in the dusk. The visions had quieted, replaced by a deep, calm knowing. "She's not angry anymore," Zora said to Mama Ruby. "She just wanted people to know the truth." Mama Ruby pulled her close. "The gift shows us what needs healing. Sweet pea. Always has." They sat together, gazing at the stars, witnesses to truth, finally rising from darkness. At the Oakwood County Courthouse, a historic crowd had gathered. Hundreds filled the steps and surrounding streets, faces of every background, divided by anger, vindication, and stunned curiosity. Inside, under the watch of Judge Eliza Washington, brought in from the state capitol to ensure impartiality, William Harrison sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit. He looked shrunken, a far cry from the man who once ruled over Oakwood's legal system. It had been 3 months since Catherine's remains were discovered. The trial was well underway. The special prosecutor, Rebecca Chin, stood and addressed the court. "The state calls Zora Williams." Gasps rippled through the room as the side door opened. Tiny and composed, Zora entered. Mama Ruby sat in the front row, flanked by Ms. Daniels and Detective Johnson, all three watching protectively. Defense attorney Spencer Williams had fought hard to block Zora's testimony, calling it unreliable and inadmissible. But Judge Washington ruled that while her visions were unconventional, her repeated accuracy made her testimony legally relevant. Zora climbed into the witness chair, her feet not reaching the floor. She answered introductory. When Prosecutor Chin asked about her visions, Zora explained them with the gentle simplicity of a child, but the details were chillingly precise. "I saw Judge Harrison hit Miss Catherine with a shovel," she said. She turned to leave. He knew she was going to tell. She dropped her bracelet when she tried to stop the shovel. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. During cross-examination, the defense tried to imply Zora had overheard adults discussing the case, but the jury had already seen enough to believe her. The courtroom, and perhaps the nation, was beginning to understand. Justice might speak in whispers, but when heard, it is undeniable. "Isn't it true you only knew these things because someone told you?" the defense attorney pressed. Zora shook her head with quiet certainty. "No, sir. I saw it in my mind. I knew where she was buried before anyone found her. I saw the necklace in his drawer. I saw the papers hidden under the floor at the lake house. No one told me any of that." Spencer Williams switched tactics. "Isn't it possible you're making this up for attention? That's not uncommon for children your age." Zora turned, meeting Harrison's eyes for the first time. "I didn't want any of this," she said calmly. "The knowing comes when it needs to, not when I want it. I can't make it happen. I can't stop it." Her quiet honesty struck deep. The defense's attempt to discredit her fell apart under the weight of her truth. The prosecution's case continued to build. Forensic experts confirmed the DNA match. Catherine's mother identified personal effects from the grave. Earl Thompson described the night he saw Harrison at the riverside. Financial investigators detailed the money trail between developers and Harrison's secret offshore accounts. Former court staff testified to his openly racist statements and a consistent pattern of judicial bias. But the most explosive moment came when Judge Harrison himself took the stand against his attorney's advice. At first composed, Harrison denied everything. But when Prosecutor Chin played the enhanced audio from Catherine's recovered tape recorder, his composure unraveled. You're finished in this town, Harrison's voice growled from the recording. No one's going to believe you? I built this system from the ground up over 2 decades. Then Catherine's voice echoed across time, calm and unwavering. The evidence speaks for itself. I'm publishing everything tomorrow. The property records, the bribes, the buried evidence, all of it. As the courtroom listened in stunned silence, Harrison snapped. He leaped to his feet, red-faced and trembling. She was going to destroy everything I built, he shouted. These people would have overrun our neighborhoods, ruined property values. Someone had to keep order. Judge Washington pounded her gavel. Order in the court. Defendant will be seated immediately. But Harrison continued, his rage boiling over into an unfiltered confession. I protected this town. I kept those people where they belong. She was going to let them take over. Bailiffs restrained him as the gallery looked on in shock. His mask had fallen completely, revealing the deep racism beneath the robe. That involuntary outburst, more than any piece of evidence, sealed his fate. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning guilty on all counts. Judge Washington denied bail and set sentencing for the following month. Outside the courthouse, Eleanor Morgan gently hugged Zora. You gave my daughter justice, she whispered. I'll never be able to thank you enough. Zora offered a soft smile. She helped me see. I just said what she showed me. But the impact of the trial extended far beyond one man. The state Supreme Court launched a full review of every case. Harrison had ruled on over his 15-year tenure. Dozens of convictions were vacated as evidence from the Lake House matched cases, where key information had been suppressed. Men who had spent years in prison were exonerated. Evictions based on Harrison's rulings, especially in East Side neighborhoods, were reversed, including Mama Ruby's, in the wake of the scandal. Connor Phillips, under criminal investigation, was forced to sell his real estate holdings. A community land trust purchased the properties using funds from Harrison's seized assets and state reparations, guaranteeing affordable housing for long-term residents. City council meetings, once ignored, were now packed. Residents demanded fairness, and a new Citizens Oversight Committee was formed to monitor the courts and police. Detective Johnson was appointed as liaison. At the sentencing, Judge Washington addressed Harrison directly. You violated the sacred trust placed in your hands. As both prosecutor and judge, you used the law not to protect but to punish those you saw as unworthy. The damage you caused to lives, to families, to faith in the system is immeasurable. She sentenced him to life in prison without parole for Catherine's murder, along with additional consecutive terms for corruption and civil rights violations. Harrison would never walk free again. The courthouse itself was renamed the Catherine Morgan Justice Center. A permanent memorial was installed detailing her investigation and the system she helped expose. For Zora and Mama Ruby, life slowly began to return to something like normal. Their eviction dismissed, utilities restored, and their home protected by the land trust. Zora returned to school, where staff now recognized the weight of her gift. She was given the space and support she needed when visions became overwhelming. From their successful civil suit, Mama Ruby founded the Williams Truth Foundation, which now helps families fight housing discrimination and funds investigative journalists uncovering systemic injustice. 1 year after Catherine's remains were found, Zora stood before the memorial plaque outside the Justice Center. A bronze relief depicted Catherine with notebook in hand, eyes sharp and fearless. The inscription read, "In memory of Catherine Morgan, journalist and seeker of truth, whose work lives on through all who fight injustice." Zora traced the engraved letters with her fingers, feeling the presence of the woman who had reached across time to speak through her. "It doesn't come as strong anymore," she told Mama Ruby softly. "I think Catherine's at peace now." Mama Ruby wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "The gift comes when it's needed, sweet pea. And you were the voice of truth when no one else could speak it. That's a heavy burden, but you carried it with grace." Together they descended the courthouse steps past the place where Zora had once stood, and defied a corrupt system into a community now changed by her courage, and by a truth that refused to remain buried. What if you had a gift like Zora? Would you risk everything to speak out, even when the cost is high? Let us know in the comments. Type 1 if you'd use your voice for justice, or 2 if fear might make you hesitate, like Earl Thompson once did. Like this video if Zora's courage moved you. Subscribe for more stories of truth, justice, and resistance. Share with someone who believes one voice can make a difference. Thank you for watching The Voice of Truth. Justice may be delayed, but when we speak truth with courage, it cannot be denied forever. Zora reminds us, sometimes it takes a child to see what adults refuse.